Today will be a fun lecture about domains and the complements of sets. I will even incorporate a paradox pitched by a Nobel Prize winner that's very famous and something you should know. Bertrand Russell, a 1950s Nobel Prize winner, pitched a very famous puzzle known as the Barber Paradox. This puzzle is extremely famous and well known by mathematicians, computer scientists, and anyone dealing with logic. Remarkably, Bertrand Russell did not win the Nobel Prize in a field related to science. He won the Nobel Prize for literature. So what exactly is the Barber Paradox? Well, the concepts that Bertrand Russell is much deeper than what this paradox may imply. He simply pitched this paradox to help people kind of digest a notion about what he was trying to get to. So the famous puzzle goes like this. Suppose there is a barber who shaves all and only those men that do not shave their own beards. The problem comes when we ask who shaves the barber. So we end up with an inescapable contradiction, like so. If the barber shaves his own beard, then the barber doesn't shave his beard. If the barber does not shave his own beard, then the barber shaves his beard. We end up with a contradiction that we can't get around. What's the solution? If the barber is outside the domain of people being considered, then no problem happens at all. We simply view the barber as being an operator on the set elements that the barber is not part of. The Barber Paradox, while simple, shows why domains matter. When we talk about a set, we always have to think about the domain. We also have to think about its complement. The complement to a set is essentially everything that's not inside the set. Without a domain, complements can become very silly. So suppose we say set A is a set of numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, then the complement of A might include the number 5, because it's not in the set. But here comes the silly part. It might also contain the helium atoms in the universe, or the Andromeda galaxy, or even the silly thoughts that just passed through your mind about what I was saying. A domain restricts the scope of a discussion so that the complement makes sense. The complement is restricted to not just everything, but things within the domain. There are some important properties associated with sets, their complement, and domains. The complement of the domain is the empty set. The complement of the empty set is the domain. A set and its complement are always disjoint. That means their intersection is empty. Their union always gives back the domain. And if you take the complement of a complement, you end up with the set itself. So let me take a moment to go to my notebook and let me demonstrate some of the examples that we discussed. Okay, let me start by first saying when a mathematician is dealing with sets, a domain should be established. So sometimes a domain can be represented with U and they refer to it as a universal set, or sometimes they refer to it as a domain and they use the letter D. So in this case, let's use the letter D. So we're going to say let D be the domain. And I will define what D is down here, where we say maybe it's 1, 2, 3, ... 9, and 10. And then I'm going to define a set A. Now when we define a domain, everything in set A should be a subset of D. So A should be a subset of D. So A could be the set of elements 1, 5, 7, and 9. Okay? Now, when we were discussing before, a complement is effectively this set in set bit notation. It's the elements such that they are not in A, but they are in the domain. So effectively, it's everything in the domain that is not in set A. So as a concrete example for what we have, 1 is in A, so it cannot be in the complement. 2, 3, and 4 are not in A, but they're in the domain. 5 is not in the complement because it's in A. 6 is in the complement, but not 7. 8 is in there, but not 9 because it's also in A. And then we have 10 because it's in the domain, but not in A. So that's effectively the simple idea behind what a set is, a domain is, and how to define the complement. Okay, to give an example of an infinite set, let's suppose that D is a set of numbers, and we'll say it's the domain. D is the domain, and we'll say it's 1, 2, 3, ... implying an infinite set. Now let's suppose A now is going to be the set of numbers 2, 4, 6, 8, dot dot dot. So effectively the even number starting with 2. A complement would then be 1, 3, 5, 7 dot dot dot, and you see that those are the odd numbers starting with 1. So as you can see, it can be both finite and infinite, and a lot of times we do have an infinite set, and we can have a domain that's infinite, but we could have a set that is finite, which means that the complement would then be infinite. Let me take a moment to demonstrate some of the properties that I had brought up from the previous slideshow. Let's assume that D is the domain and that A is just simply a subset of that domain. Now, to be clear, I'm intentionally not assigning these things values or giving specific instances because these properties that I'm about to show, they will hold regardless and are always true. So a complement will always be a subset of the domain. The union of a set and its complement will always be the domain. The intersection between a set and its complement will always be empty. We refer to these things anytime two sets have an empty intersection, we refer to them as being disjoint. If we say the domain is everything, and that's what we're claiming, that must mean its complement must be the empty set. The complement to the empty set must be the domain. And the complement to the complement must always be the set itself. So these are properties that will always be true. Let me demonstrate an example that sometimes catches students off guard, and it can actually sneak in with anyone, and it's just a matter of paying attention to what's going on typically. So let's suppose that we have D, a domain, and let's suppose that it's a set of numbers 1, 2, dot, 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 all the way up to 10. So just the whole numbers from 1 to 10. And we are going to label this the domain. And then let's suppose that set A is a set of numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we'll say that B is a set of numbers 2, 4, and 6. Now notice this relationship that I'm implying here. B is a subset of A, and A obviously is a subset of the domain, as everything should be. Now, this chain says that B is a subset of D, but sometimes students may jump to the conclusion that B's domain is A. That's not the case. The domain is still the domain for B. So when we say B complement, students might be tempted to say it's everything in A that's not in B, but that's not true. The complement is still the domain, the original domain. So B complement will be this. It'll be 1, not 2, but 3, not 4, but 5, not 6, and then it will be 7, 8, 9, and 10. So keep that in mind. It's the subset, the superset of the subset, the nearest superset is not necessarily the domain. The original thing is called the domain will be the domain for all sets, even when we have nested subsets. So occasionally I'll create a homework assignment for my students, and it's not meant to trick, it's just meant that to reinforce that sometimes we have to be very careful and very cautious when we're looking at things, because in a context or a domain, sometimes there's a lot of words flying around, sometimes there's a lot of complexity flying around, and if we're not careful, we just assume that the nearest superset that's been defined becomes the new domain. It's not. The domain has to be defined. And again, anytime that we actually create a set to avoid Bertrand Russell's edge case about the barber, and remember, where do computer scientists need to be most careful at? The edge cases that are typically highly unlikely to be considered, but when they do, they create massive problems in our servers or our programs or whatever else. Identifying all edge cases is difficult. And if I said, well, the barber, and I gave that Barber Paradox, in fact, there's no problems until you consider the barber. And sometimes not everyone would have considered the barber, depending on how versed you are in set theory, or maybe sometimes we just get lucky and we identify an edge case early, right? So in any case, remember, always be mindful that when a domain is defined, it applies to everything from then on out. The domain should always be defined anytime we create a set. And we cannot discuss complements until we define a domain. And per the Barber Paradox and some of the arguments pitched by Betrand Russell, we should always be aware that when we define a set, we should also be defining its complement at the same time. which basically gets taken care of when we define a domain. So long story short, always define a domain or be aware of it. Sometimes it's implied, but make sure that everyone operating on your set is aware of the domain because it helps us identify edge cases. And if we have a domain, we can then identify the complement of the set. Okay, that concludes my notebook of examples. To summarize, domains restrict the scope of a discussion. Complements only make sense once a domain is defined. A set and its complement, they're always disjoint. Their union is always the domain, and the complement of a complement is always the original set. Anytime we make a set, we need to be aware of its domain. We also need to be aware of the complement of the set. This will help us identify edge cases and any problems where we may have a logical issue going forward with our analysis. So thank you for watching. I encourage you to leave comments on this lecture. It helps me know what I did right and things that I can improve in the future. So I appreciate those positive comments, and I encourage you to watch this video and the videos that I'll create in the future. Keep in mind, the comments you make will help me make better videos in the future. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.